Welcome back to Adelaide Entrepreneurs. This is the show where we interview Adelaide entrepreneurs about what they've done, what they're doing, and what we can learn from them. My guest for this show is a little different to some of the ones we've had previously. The reason I'm having him on is not because he's building a tech startup, although he does have one in the works. It's because he's set a different set of goals, namely traveling, which is something I enjoy and many people, other people do too. And he's figured out a way of doing this while also working to fund his adventures. Chris Schwarz, welcome to the show.
Hey Nick, hey guys.
Let's get into it with first question here. Where did you first get the idea of this this travel work thing?
Yeah, I was working for a company probably 3 years ago, and I had the experience my boss flew me over to Manila. We had a call center in the Philippines, and I worked alongside probably about 20 Filipino call center people for about 2 weeks, just with my laptop, just doing my normal job as I would from Adelaide, and it was just sort of addictive to be able to work and then lunchtime go to walk outside and be in a different country. I loved it.
Awesome. And when was this?
This was July 2010. So it was about two and a half years ago almost.
And what was the job you were doing at the time?
It was working for a company that was sort of an in-house online marketing role, sort of just a real junior coordinator type role. And we had a few different clients. One of them was one of the largest direct marketing companies in the world. Really interesting business model. Outsourced a lot to the Philippines, so interesting business model and interesting company. And
was the reason they sent you there was it to help train the people, or was it for your benefit, or what was the reason for them sending you over?
It was just I guess a bit of a treat. He always said he'd take me over, and the big boss went over once a month, and he just said this time, Chris, fly over with me. So yeah.
Awesome. And had you done any traveling or overseas stuff before that?
That was my second trip overseas. The first time I went to Thailand just for a couple of weeks, going back 2008, 2009. So yeah, this time in the Philippines was probably the first sort of big trip. I think I was gone for maybe 5 or 6 weeks.
Yep. Awesome. And is this what sort of turned you on to maybe I could actually do this more longer term, or did that come later?
Yeah, no, I think that was probably the catalyst that time in the Philippines. And I was probably working for maybe 3 weeks, and then I got 3 weeks holidays, and I just went down to some of the Filipino islands by myself, and my first experience, I guess, of solo travel. And yeah, it was just addictive, and I just thought, how can I continue to do this?
Awesome. Let's take it back a little bit now to before this all happened. Now, people can go read your story, I guess, up on your website, freelancebackpacker.com. You studied engineering, and then you sort of found your way into the internet marketing world. Can you just tell us a bit about that story?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I finished an engineering and a finance degree going back end of 2008, and yeah, I sort of had a bit of a life plan going forward. I had a job lined up at an engineering consultancy firm, and when the job sort of came around, I got called in about 2 weeks before I was meant to start the job, and there was just an envelope on the table, the head of engineering and the head of HR, and they said, sorry mate, there's no jobs, we're going to let all our grads go. So there was probably, yeah, the recession definitely impacted the graduate engineering market quite heavily, and yeah, I was a casualty of it. And from there, it was sort of spent a lot of time unemployed, and I guess I spent a lot of time on the internet, and I actually became quite addicted to Twitter going back in, I think, 2009, and I just thought it was a really cool tool. A lot of businesses could use it, and yeah, sort of went on from there, and I sort of was unemployed for probably 10 months and really needed some money, and I found a job for a marketing coordinator, and I just, yeah, applied, and I managed to get the job, and that was the job that sent me to the Philippines a year and a half later.
Awesome. Now, can you, well, let's just get an idea of timeline again. You had was it 2010 where you went to the Philippines that time?
Yeah, it was July 2010.
And then when did you do your first sort of trip overseas where you were really trying to do the work travel thing?
Okay. So yeah, that job, it was such an interesting job, but it didn't quite work out for me. So I ended up leaving and really heavily starting to push some of my own private clients. I set up my own company and got a few really small clients and kept going from there. And then I managed to, through a mutual friend, get introduced to DBG Technologies, who I sort of do a lot of work for now. And I was really transparent with my work intentions to go overseas and travel. And I was lucky enough to find some really cool employers that were like, yeah, if you get the work done, mate, you can work from wherever you are. So probably about 6 months after I started full-time work for them, I ventured off into, where did I go first? Japan on that trip. So yeah, I finished up on a Friday in Adelaide. I flew out on, I think it was the Sunday night, and I had a few days in Tokyo just exploring, and then I think it was the Wednesday or the Thursday, I just started work again in a serviced office in downtown Tokyo.
And when was this? This was 2000.
Must have been the end of 2011, I think now.
2011. I
Yeah,
got to get used to saying 2011 instead of 2011.
yeah.
It's much
No, it was,
cooler to say 2011.
no, it was November 2011. That's right.
Awesome. So let's you've gone through a little bit there, but can you sort of walk us through the steps you took to get yourself into that position? So I mean, you said you were really open about what your objectives were with traveling when you were looking
Yep.
for a job, and was it fairly lucky that you managed to find the employers that would allow you to do that? Did you have to do much convincing?
Yeah, it was about I think understanding the sort of understanding interdependence in that we both sort of needed each other to grow. You know, I was pretty I was probably going to go. I was definitely going to go overseas anyway. Maybe it was to the UK to get a working visa, and my employers were like, "Yeah, no worries. We'll come on and we'll see how you go." And I just did a really great job. And it was basically, I always had this sort of frame of mind, I guess, win-win for both of us. If I could get my employer into a win-win situation, then there wouldn't be any other option for him to go, yeah, no worries, just make sure you get the work done, log your hours. Yeah.
Awesome. It's I'm happen to be reading 4 Hour Work Week at the moment, and he talks a little bit about sort of these external work agreements. Did that was that you were aware of that book or anything like that when you were doing this? Did that?
Yeah, for sure.
Specific?
I think, yeah, Tim Ferriss has a pretty popular book. Most digital nomads or even entrepreneurs have read it or follow it quite significantly, yeah.
Yeah. So that was at least sort of within your
Oh,
mind
yeah.
there somewhere. Yeah. So if someone else was to wanting to do a similar sort of thing, do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, well, there's probably, say, two different streams. The first one is, are you going to work overseas for your current employer, or are you going to work for yourself? So if you're going to work for your current employer and you sort of want to approach them, always have in your mind, get them into a win-win situation where they have no other option, and start small and go, like, start by just opening up a spreadsheet and going, how many of my hours per day do I spend at a computer? And how many do I not? And then sort of working out, approaching your boss and going, look, I'd like to start doing a day a week from home, and seeing how that goes. You are effectively working remotely. And try and make it work really, really well. Do that for a few months and then go, look, maybe I want to go away for a week somewhere and I'm going to go take my laptop and I'm going to work. And sort of baby steps from there and build it up to, now I'm going to Kuala Lumpur for a month. Let's see how it goes.
Awesome, awesome. And you mentioned as well that you had your own business. Does it work better if you're working for someone else where they've already got an established stream of clients and they can just pay you, whereas I guess if you have your own business, that can be quite time consuming to be trying to run that and getting new clients and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely two different worlds there. Um, I guess I have been quite lucky into my employer. I mean, they still send me the work, and I've also got a small stream of private clients as well. So I sort of really understood and pushed forward diversification through everything that I do, whether it's private clients, relying on other people, trying to just diversify all of my income. And I found that starting to work quite effectively.
Cool. Well, let's have a look at what have been some of the challenges that you've faced along the way, and how did you sort of overcome them?
Yeah, remain calm, I think, in some stages. Yeah, probably most countries I've sort of lived in, there's definitely been something go a little bit wrong. That's probably just sort of just cost me money to get out of. So I remember the very first day when I was working in Tokyo. I woke up and I'd sort of been planning this trip for like 6 months. I had to sort of get up at a certain time, Skype my boss and go, look, I'm ready to work now. I'm going to do a good job. And I sort of woke up, I connected my laptop, and the Wi-Fi signal just didn't come on. I was like, shit, it's not going to work. And the internet in the house just totally failed. And it was also it was a public holiday in Japan. So there were no internet cafes open anywhere. My backup plan was to go to a serviced office. Whenever I'm traveling, I used a serviced office company, so I can always rock up there, and they've always got internet. But because it was a public holiday, it was they were all closed, and I was just, yeah, it was a really stressful morning just trying to find an internet connection. So that was, yeah, difficulty in Japan. When I entered Vietnam,
did you end up finding an internet connection? How did
yeah,
you solve that?
I tried hotels, I tried Macca's, and I ended up finding this Wi-Fi chain in this back streets of downtown Tokyo, and I probably paid, say, $20 an hour for the internet, but it was just super fast internet, and yeah, it was yeah, like a real anime themed cafe. It was cool. So yeah, I got it all sorted. Looking back now, it wasn't a big problem, but at the time, it was very stressful.
Yeah, I guess when you're first getting into it there, and you obviously you're trying to prove that it can work, it could be a bit of a
Yeah.
hiccup, or at least at the time, stressful. Any other challenges?
Yeah, there's a big one in. I went to after Japan. I flew into Hanoi in northern Vietnam, and I think the first few days went really well. I found a cool hostel to stay at, and then one day my laptop just would not turn on. And it was a brand new laptop. It was only about 4 or 5 months old, so it was still under warranty. But I was in the middle of a giant Southeast Asian city, so it took me probably 3 days just to find the Dell authorized repairer in Hanoi. It's for anyone that's been to a Southeast Asian city, they can just be an absolute nightmare to get stuff done. So I found this Dell authorized repairer, and they said, yep, no worries, it's going to take maybe 10 to 15 days to get this fixed. And I was like, oh, shit, I really need a computer, I really need a laptop. And I sort of did the maths, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to have to go and buy one. So I bought a new laptop, and it probably took about 36 hours for the Dell authorized repairer to ring me back and go, your laptop's fixed now, you can come pick it up. So for probably 2 weeks in Vietnam, I just had 2 laptops, was working out of 2 really fast new laptops. So like I said,
Wow.
I mean, that one just cost me money. I mean, I had to sell it, and I lost half the value, but hey, it was a good experience.
That's it's an interesting point. I mean, so many things can go wrong when you're traveling, and you don't have the same resources that you have when you sort of set up at home, and you have your, the language, you speak the right language, and you have your money there, and all
Yeah.
your networks and whatnot. Do you have any tips for? Does it just be about? Is it something you can learn just to be resourceful, or do you have tips for making sure you have good backups and things? What's a good way to make sure that you can continue when some of these hiccups happen?
Yeah, it's probably about, you said it when you said resourceful. Definitely, I mean, now I sort of always just make sure I've got enough money if my laptop gets stolen or it breaks down and I can't fix it, to just always have, 5, 7, $800 to just quickly go and get another laptop. As for internet connection, I mean, it really depends what country you're in as well. Even somewhere, every country sort of presents a new challenge that you can't really predict what it is. Like even in Japan, they've got their internet's just a tiny little bit different and operates on some different, some bands. So I could never ever connect to a Wi-Fi signal there and things like that. But yeah, like I said before, I use the service office now. I pay $60 a month, and I've got access to 2,500 offices around the world. So that's worked out really well.
Oh wow! So that's one big company which has lots of service offices everywhere.
Yep. That's it's Regis. It's like a UK-based company, and they're just probably the biggest. They've pretty much got a monopoly on serviced offices in every country, every city in the world.
Awesome. And just as a quick segue, a serviced office that tends to be where you. How do you pay for that? Do you pay like per day, or do you pay for a chunk of time, like a month, or?
Yep. Well, for Regis, I mean, I'm sure every company is a little bit different, but Regis has sort of different tiers of membership in which you pay monthly, and I've always paid the least amount. I think it was $60. It was a little bit less in India, but basically, I have free internet in what they call the business lounge. So it's basically maybe a chair with a table sitting next to the secretary out in the reception area. But usually there's fast internet, there's water, there's coffee, there's tea. So it's really designed around people. I mean, the other option is that you actually hire a private room for the day or for the month. But these are like, I don't know, $100 a day, $150 a day. So you do meet some pretty interesting people in these serviced offices, especially in Hong Kong. There's all these huge CEOs of massive companies coming through. Yeah, interesting times.
Wow, awesome. And what kind of costs are we talking about with these service offices?
It's a global. They've got different memberships. I think the most I've ever paid has been $60 a month.
Oh wow, so that's not too bad at all, is it?
Yeah.
Cool. Just before we move on, I wanted to touch on a few other things. Internet speeds. Is it fairly sufficient to do work? I mean, obviously not downloading massive movies or anything like that. So just for working.
Yeah, I think in my line of work, I mean, yeah, like you said, I'm not downloading. I'm not a graphic designer, a video editor. I just need to sort of be able to browse fairly consistently. And most countries I've been to, I mean, Japan was amazing. Hong Kong internet was unreal. Surprisingly, Vietnam, the whole country is fiber backed, so it's especially in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, you can easily get 8 to 10 megabits at a random internet cafe, which is pretty much what I can get in Adelaide. India was a bit hit and miss at times, but I could find some good internet connections that were maybe 2 or 3 megabits, and that's all I need.
Awesome. And do you tend to? The next section we're moving on to is sort of accommodation, which you've got a particular thing you're working on in that area. But a few questions sort of leading into that. Do you tend to stay a while in each place? I mean, if you're paying per month for the serviced office, do you stay for months, or is it a shorter time?
Yeah, generally I've stayed for at least 1 month. I think that sort of gives me enough time to. I mean, I love big cities. I love learning about, I'm pretty much obsessed with big city infrastructure, building subway systems. So a month is probably enough for me to sort of learn about it. But I think Philippines was longer. I stayed in India for 2 months. Hong Kong, I was there for almost 3 months. So it really depends. I remember in my time in Vietnam, I think I had a 3-month visa, so I intended to stay for 3 months, and I got to about the end of the first month and I actually had a ticket booked to Nha Trang, which is a beach city there, and it was probably about 12 hours before I was meant to fly out, and I got a call from a mate, and he's like, "I'm going to Hong Kong, I'll meet you there." So I cancelled my ticket and flew to Hong Kong at like the very last minute, so probably just some of the freedom that I have.
Cool, yeah. I remember when I was traveling that I like to stay in places for a long time as well, as a reflection of traveling style. But I guess it can also help with making the work thing
for sure.
work a little bit better. by not. I mean, obviously, if you're moving a lot more, then you have more expenses and things. So
Yeah, no, totally agree. You need to be semi-settled to actually get work done. You can't exactly be trying to work off train platforms and internet connections at airports, and yeah, I can't do that personally. I need to be semi-settled.
yeah, I think I would be in the same boat on that one. Just that brings me to a post that I remember reading on your website about trying to work in a hostel. Now, when I've been traveling, I've done lots of hosteling, and hostels can definitely be fun, but it's hard to imagine actually getting work done there. Do you have any thoughts on hostels for working?
Yeah, they can be really hard. It depends what sort of person you are. Takes a bit of discipline, but I mean, it was, yeah, every night, especially in Hanoi, where it's a tourist city. So every day you just get a load of backpackers come through that just want to have a few beers and chill out in the common room. And that's where I was working from in Hanoi. So yeah, it did get hard at times. Didn't, yeah. Definitely, I stayed in Goa on the west coast of India, and that one was really difficult. That was, did not get much work done that month.
Now, you've recently written a guide to finding short-term accommodation in any city. It's sort of an ebook guide, and that's available from your website, www.freelancebackpacker.com. Can you tell us a little bit, maybe a few tips from that guide?
Yeah, sure. Basically, the ebook teaches you to come up with a set of criteria that's relative to you and what's important to you about living not only in an apartment, but also what's important to you around in the environment. So basically, you come up with a list of criteria, and then I teach you how to go and research how to the best location. So it might be going onto a couch surfing forum and asking a series of set of questions which you construct. And I teach you how to construct these questions in the ebook. I also talk about budgeting as well. So something like heading over to numbeo.com, numbeo.com, which is just a great resource for finding the cost of living in pretty much any city in the world.
Cool. And people can just purchase this through your website
Yeah.
and use it if they're. Is it useful for people just traveling generally, or specifically targeted to sort of people doing what you're doing?
Yeah, it's probably more targeted at, it is targeted at digital nomads and expats as well that want to stay for at least a month to 6 months in any city in the world. So yeah, I mean, if you're backpacking around, you're best to just go to hostelworld.com and sort by a rating and find the best hostel.
Awesome. Well, in the intro, I mentioned that you have a bit of a tech startup or a startup that you're working on that's called Swazoo.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about this idea and what it's all about?
Yeah, so I think the idea was probably building up in my head for a few years, and it's just an amalgamation of a few different areas where I think sort of the future of e-commerce and heading. And basically, I think there's room for disruption for like a service to operate between consumers and e-commerce stores that sort of brings in a human element to the buying process. So at the moment, you go down to a Myers and you buy a fridge and you talk to a customer service rep. They ask you questions and they learn like your situation, and then they go, this product is best for you. And I want to sort of bring this into the online world, and I'm going to sort of target the niche of male shopping first, because I think there's a lot of guys out there, male fashion. I think there's just a lot of guys out there that just have no idea about fashion. They don't have the time. So Nick, would you use a service if you could log on, if you could input maybe some of your favorite brands, where you live, your occupation, and then go, I need a new dress shirt or a new casual pair of shoes, and I want something that can match my style, and you're then hooked up with a female a fashion stylist that can actually recommend you an item of clothing. So that's basically the idea.
That sounds awesome, because I'm terrible when it comes to buying new clothes. I pretty much just put it off forever. Because it's so awkward for me, and then you know, I end up just buying something really quickly when I get in there, and when it's the last minute. So something like this, I think probably there's a lot of people out there who this could be useful for.
Yeah, it's coming along. It's been in a development phase for probably a bit longer than expected, but I mean, I'm not naive to think that the first sort of idea that when it launches is going to work, but you know, it's been a good process to learn about how to sort of model a startup and even get it developed, because it's all being bootstrapped at the moment with my own funds. So I'm trying to just do it as cheaply as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I'm got the expectation that it's definitely going to iterate into something maybe a lot different to what it is now, but that's part of the process.
And did you design this idea or the way it's going to work with the objective of it supporting your travel work lifestyle, or is it sort of a separate thing altogether from that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, hopefully it can generate a bit of passive income, semi-passive income. I mean, I'm actually in the target market for which the startup is launched at, so I'm not exactly going to be doing the stylist stuff myself. So, yeah, we'll just see how it goes.
Cool. So I mean, yeah, absolutely. I just thought it's an interesting perhaps question leading into that, which is do you have any sort of tips or some ideas on good business models for people who want to do a sort of a travel work type lifestyle, or you know, some degree of not working where you have to be face to face, but like an online type thing? But I mean, there's lots of stuff out there. So do you have any ideas on that?
It's probably about working out how to produce content. I think is pretty much very, very broadly. It's about trying to work out how to produce content, niche content that no one else has produced, and then market it. So I think, you know, an example of this is just a blog, and blogs are quite a mature industry now. There's plenty of people making passive income off blogs, niche content targeted at a niche audience, and then working out how to monetize it. Even, you know, Web Marketing Adelaide, it's a podcast. It's niche content for businesses in Adelaide. So just, yeah, going upon what you know, starting off doing like a bit of a mind map about what you actually know, what knowledge you have. This is sort of where I got the idea from the accommodation ebook. I sort of, you know, sat down one day and started writing out some of the things I've learned over traveling. And I've learned how to sort of successfully find accommodation. And this was a skill that content that I have. And I know there's got to be a market for it out there somewhere.
Cool, yeah, good advice, I think. I think that pretty much brings me to the end of my list of questions there, and I think we've got a pretty good interview there, so we'll probably leave it there.
Cool.
Thanks very much for coming on the show, Chris. It's been a really interesting conversation, and if people want to find out more about you, freelancebackpacker.com, is that the best place to go?
That's the best place.
Now, I think you're in Adelaide at the moment. When are you heading off on your next trip?
I bought my ticket last week. I'm flying to Singapore, I think June 18th I fly out. But then I'm going to make it over to Hong Kong, and the plan is to catch trains from Hong Kong to Paris. So it's going to be quite an epic journey.
That's a long way.
Yeah.
No doubt. Interesting. Awesome. Well, I hope that trip goes well, of course, and maybe we'll try and connect up with you perhaps down the road when you're overseas,
that'd be great.
if possible.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Chris, for coming on the show, and have a good one.
No worries. Thanks, Nick.